Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So today is the 8th of June. We're in Lashmahago. I got it right that time. Yes. Okay, so we were talking about deities. This will probably be the last session on deities today. There's not much more. And then we'll go to another topic. So today we're going to talk about Gauratai. A little bit, some things here and there. So let's have a look and see what we've got. Now, I don't know whether I mentioned this on the one of the last sessions. Prabhupada had been in Washington, D.C. He went there in the beginning of July 1976. And that was because it was the American bicentennial, 1776 to 1976, 200 years of American independence. So the devotees thought that it would be nice if Prabhupada was in the capital of America for the July 4th independence celebrations. So we had about a week there. And during that period, one of the devotees showed Srila Prabhupada a picture of Gauratai in Baltimore, because Baltimore is not very far away, I think like 40 miles or 50 miles. So Prabhupada became so attracted by that picture, he said, let's go there and have a darshan. So instead of taking his morning walk on July the 7th, at 6 a.m. Prabhupada drove to Baltimore, which is about 40 miles north. A couple of days ago, Rupanuga Prabhu had shown him a photo of the Baltimore deities, Sri Sri Gauratai. Prabhupada found them so attractive that he decided to visit. He didn't speak much on the way, preferring to chant quietly on his beads. Several other cars of devotees also accompanied our vehicle along the highway. The temple is a large two-story suburban house with some land at the side and back. The main room on the ground floor has been converted into a temple. The altar was profusely decorated with a dozen vases of colourful flowers, and everything was clean and bright. Srila Prabhupada stood for several minutes in front of the gorgeously dressed forms of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, visually drinking in the beauty of their visage. The deities bore the most beautiful of smiles, appearing effulgent and well cared for. Then Prabhupada mounted his Vyasasana to receive Guru Puja and to speak on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 20, verse 102. Pradyumna Prabhu led the devotees in responsive chanting of the verse. When we finished, Srila Prabhupada smiled. It is, of course, a Bengali text, and Srila Prabhupada is from Bengal. So he chuckled, telling us that technically our chanting was all right, but we should learn to chant it as the Bengalis do. The verse concerned was Srila Sanatana Goswami's questioning of the Lord as to why he had to suffer the threefold miseries of life. In his half-hour discourse, Prabhupada explained that suffering was alleviated when one regained his original spiritual position. He expressed his satisfaction with the devotee's service. So this benediction is offered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has very, very kindly come here, Nitai Gaur. So you take advantage of his mercy. You are very fortunate that Nitai Gaur is here. If you simply chant Nitai Gaur and dance, then you'll be happy. There's no difficulty. You are chanting Jai Satchinandana. So this simple chanting, Jai Satchinandana, Hare Krishna, I am not manufacturing. This is the injunction of the Shastra. In this age, simply by chanting and dancing, you get complete spiritual service. So I'm very glad that you're taking care of Nitai Gaur so nicely. They are so nicely dressed. So continue these activities. And even if you cannot do anything, simply chant Hare Krishna and Jai Satchinandana and dance. That will make your life perfect. So that was a nice comment there about Gauratai worship. I've already mentioned how Prabhupada said in Melbourne that Prabhupada said Gauratai are so merciful that for their worship all you have to do is just do kirtan, nothing else. Even if you don't make any offerings, if you don't dress them, it doesn't matter, just offer them some kirtan and they'll be very happy with you. So I also mentioned how Prabhupada encouraged devotees to manufacture their own deities rather than have to import them from India. And the devotees had done that in Melbourne. They had made their own brass Gaunitai deities. And I remember also one other time, this was like 1973 in Sydney, we had one devotee he was a bit of a sculptor. He liked wood carving. So he made a form of Lord Chaitanya, like this, about 2 feet high. And Madhavisa Swami, he was the GVC at that time, to encourage the man, he put the murti on the altar. Then they took photos and they sent that to Prabhupada. But when Prabhupada wrote back, he said, this is not good, because he had made the form of the Lord very thin, so he looked very kind of skinny and spindly. And Prabhupada said Lord Chaitanya was very well built. Yeah, his form was very strongly built. So he didn't like that. He said, take it off, don't put it on the altar. So if you're going to make deities, but then, there's a standard, and you have to make sure that you actually replicate the actual form of the Lord. Anyway, so as far as manufacturing deities are concerned, Prabhupada even also told devotees in Vrindavan that they should also begin manufacturing deities. In particular, Dhananjaya Prabhu, he'd been the temple president when the temple was opened. Later on, Akshayananda Swami became the temple president, but Dhananjaya was living there. He just had a daughter, and he and his wife, were living as grihastas. So Prabhupada told them, he said, you can live as grihastas and do some business. And he even he called him in and he gave him advice on what business to do and how to do it. And he also offered him to give a loan of his own money to Dhananjaya so that he could start this business up. So this was on September the 11th, 1976 in Vrindavan. So Dhananjaya had sought advice from Srila Prabhupada about setting up a deity-making business in Vrindavan, a task that Prabhupada had set him on a previous visit and which he was eager to pursue. Prabhupada welcomed his interest, seeing it as a good way to keep the devotees constructively occupied. Develop that business and give engagement, he told them. The women can live here for sewing. They must be comfortably situated. The women, they cannot feel very bad and stay. We don't want that. So they can live here in a room and work sewing. And our women who have learned, then they can teach. So that's a very simple thing. So he explained that the deities of Gaunitai and Radha Krsna, ranging in size from 6 to 15 inches, could be cast in nearby Aligarh. He told Dhananjaya to get help from Surendra Kumar Saigal, whose Aligarh-based company makes brass locks. I mentioned him. We had done a program earlier in the year at Mr. Saigal's house one night. And then actually after this, in October, we went back there and did a 2-day program at his house. So he was making brass locks, so he already knew the whole process, how to deal with brass. He was very favourable. So Prabhupada told Dhananjaya, just go and see him, and he'll help you to manufacture these brass deities. Prabhupada saw the idea as a good opportunity. Our men could finish the deities, provide dresses and other paraphernalia, and then sell them to every ISKCON center. He calculated, there are 100 centers, so if you can dispatch at least 12 pairs to each center, then you can make business for 1,200 pairs of deities. It will be a very big business. And if they are displayed, then people will like to purchase. So, Prabhupada was... Of course, Prabhupada was an expert businessman. He was expert at everything. And he was telling Dhananjaya, there's so many temples, you make so many deities, you persuade them to buy them, they can sell them in their shops. That way you can do a very good business. So he said that we could have a shop in our temple here, similar to the shops in Loi Bazaar. And he encouraged Dhananjaya to use his own initiative. So Prabhupada was saying the devotees are spending so many thousands of dollars, to Loi Bazaar with all the merchants there. buying all the, deity clothing and the paraphernalia and, and actual deities. So why not that money, stay within ISKCON? Let it be used for supporting the householders in Vrindavan. So he told him, applied business brain. Everything I'll have to tell you. For anyone who has got a business brain, he can earn any amount of money. Incense, deity, then mukut, then tulsi mala, kartals, some panchapatra. So in this way, so he's describing all the different paraphernalias. So this program I am giving, and if you can give some practical sense, then it will be very nice, profitable business. When Dhananjaya mentioned that some capital will be required to get things started, Prabhupada assured him that there was no shortage of funds, telling him to work closely with Gopal Krishna and Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam was a local man that lived around the corner. And when Prabhupada first got the land there in Ramanreti, then Bhagavatam was practically the only local person who came forward to help him. He immediately, of course, liked Prabhupada, and he liked the devotees, and he was living literally like 50 meters away. So he immediately started helping Prabhupada with the land and the building, and he also donated the land next door, which the Gurukul was built on. And he gave a lakh of rupees to help build the Gurukul. And then he got involved in the management of the temple once it was opened. So Prabhupada liked him very much. And he always took Bhagavatam's advice on how to do things in Vrindavan. So they were there, and he told Dhananjaya, you work closely with Bhagavatam and Gopal Krishna. Capital, there is no question, he said. The question is how you shall utilize it and how you will make a profit. Capital, by the grace of Krishna, you can take lakhs and lakhs. I can arrange that. If I say to the bank, then they will have to give you. Or I can personally give you. So there's no question of capital scarcity. The only thing is, how will you utilize this capital and how will you make a profit? So you make that program. Bhagavatam, who lived for many years in Aligarh and has many relatives there, asked Dhananjaya if he understood how to utilize the funds. Dhananjaya gave his assurance that he knew what was required to make some return on the investment. And Prabhupada added, no, return also gradually, not at a time. Because if you take 5,000 rupees, you can pay it back at the rate of 500 rupees. So he's saying you don't even have to pay it all back in one go. Little, but make the business successful. Dhananjaya had another question. Many devotees were asking me if we could make a deity of your divine grace. At this request, Prabhupada became a little bashful. That is not immediate, gradually, he said. We shall see later on. You can make, but we shall see later on, not immediately. Immediately you make this arrangement. So switching back to the original concept, Prabhupada advised Dhananjaya on the style of the deities. He raised his arms above his head and he stretched his palms open with his fingers pointed outwards. He said this should be the pose for Gaunitai, Navadvip style, like this. Radha Krishna should be Vrindavan style, he said, with Radharani's right hand raised above the waist level, her palm upwards, and the thumb joined to the tip of her index finger. So you've seen that pose. That was the one that Prabhupada liked the best. Yeah, she's got it. Because sometimes we see Radharani's with her hand like this, but that's actually Lakshmi pose. Radharani's pose is like this, more dancing and offering. Confident the venture would be a success, Prabhupada said there would be profit both materially and spiritually. Very good business we will have. I want to introduce in every family, means deities. If they do not worship, then let them keep them as dolls. That will also give them some inspiration. In this way, be encouraged, and in full capacity you do business and get others. When Dhananjaya mentioned that a Spanish brahmachari had just arrived, who was an expert woodcarver, and he had even brought his tools with him, Prabhupada said that he could design a small, collapsible singer-sound, which could be sold with each set of deities. Dhananjaya then took his leave, anxious to make arrangements for the business. So, those Prabhupada told him, you can sell them on Sankirtan even. So go out and sell them and tell people these are good luck dolls. Yeah, you just buy these dolls, you keep them on your, cupboard or mantelpiece or whatever, and they're good luck dolls, and you buy some incense, you can just wave some incense at them every day, like this. That was Prabhupada's plan. So, Gaunitai on Sankirtan. So, another version of travelling Gaunitai. Prabhupada had gone, we were in Bombay in 1970, actually this is 75. Hansadutta had come for to be Prabhupada's secretary for the month. And Prabhupada was discussing with him about doing a village-to-village preaching program. Because at that time, at the end of 74, there had been a lot of problems with the authorities in Germany. The police had raided the temple at Schloss Retterhof and virtually closed down, the temple and stopped all the Sankirtan activities. So Hansadutta had become a bit discouraged. Then in 1976, Prabhupada encouraged, 1975 when he came to be Prabhupada's secretary in December, Prabhupada started encouraging him to do some preaching in India and to get some buses. He had a plan to travel all around India. So Prabhupada was in Bombay then on December 16th. Yesterday, he gave Hansadutta permission to buy a bus and start a travelling Sankirtan party in India. He suggested that they carry Sri Sri Gaunitai in a box. Then wherever they stop, they can take their lordships out, sit under a tree and hold kirtan. Prabhupada assured him that many people would come. Then afterwards, prasadam could be distributed and a discourse held. Do it immediately, Prabhupada said enthusiastically. He went on to explain that he had planned to do this, but somehow or another I came to the West. It was Krishna's arrangement, so now the Americans are doing. And in fact, later in the month there, we went to Sanand in Gujarat, and we did actually a couple of village programs. We went to Sanand, there was a big parade. When we arrived, then they had a big reception for Srila Prabhupada. Then the king of Sanand, he had this horse-drawn carriage, kind of a bit beaten up, it was a bit old, but it was nice. And Prabhupada and the king went through the town, down the main thoroughfare there, and thousands of people came out. They were up on the roofs, they were on the balconies, they were crowding in the streets, throwing flowers down, and it was really excellent. And we just had a few devotees there, maybe about 4 or 5, so they had gone up the front. I was travelling on the carriage with Srila Prabhupada, standing on the back and holding an umbrella over his head. Hansadutta went off up the front to do kirtan with Yasunari Nandan and his wife, and Hari Prabhupada was there also. So they were doing a little kirtan up the front, and Harikesh was running around with the camera taking photos. As we went along, several hundred ladies gathered behind the carriage. So automatically they just did it without any prompting from us, and they started chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. They all knew it, and they just started spontaneously chanting. So as we were going along, all the hundreds of ladies were coming behind chanting like that. It was really, really nice. And it was the first time probably that I saw, the practical manifestation of what Prabhupada had often told us, that people in India are just naturally devotees. They just automatically do these things. It's in the culture. So it was very wonderful. And then over the next few days, we went to a couple of other villages, Bavala, and I think there was some other place. Same thing, when we got to Bavala, there was a procession, and this time it was a camel procession. So they had all these camel carts, and we were travelling along, they put a seat on the top of this camel cart, and we're sitting up there with Prabhupada, Hansadutta was behind, and then I remember every time we stopped, the camel behind, because camels have big long necks, he was kind of poking his nose into the back of Hansadutta's head practically. Anyway, it was really nice. We had a great reception, and so Hansadutta got really enthusiastic when he saw how the village people, were responding to kirtan. And so Prabhupada really encouraged him a lot, and he told him, I wanted to do this program in the 1950s. And in fact, actually, sometimes Prabhupada used to go on padayatras when he was living in Jhansi. Then this Prabhakacharya, Haridas, he said, there's a memory series that Siddhanta did, and he says there that sometimes Prabhupada would actually walk from Jhansi to one of the local villages doing kirtan all the way, and he would go with him, and Prabhupada would just go there and do kirtan just himself. Yeah, he was so enthusiastic. So anyway, Prabhupada said I couldn't get any response at that time. I would ask, big businessman, and you have so many sons, you just give me one son, I'll train him as a brahmana, like this, and make him a pukka devotee. And they would say, oh, what is the use for all of this now? Now we need technology. So nobody gave their sons. So anyway, Prabhupada was a bit disappointed, he didn't get any response. But he said, you Americans, he said, I couldn't do it, but now you can do it. So, he was very enthusiastic, and he told how to get some buses and go out. And this was the system. Get Gaunitai in a box, wherever you go, take them out of the box, go in procession, do kirtan, then you find some spot, put the deity down, people will come and you get them to give, some grains, some dal, little sabji. Then in the daytime you cook that, and then in the evening you announce we're having a program, and then all the ingredients that they've supplied, then you give that back to them after offering it to the deity. So you get khichdi, prasadam, and distribute that and do kirtan, and then have a little discourse. And that's it, that's the program. And like that you travel from one place to another. So they actually did that, they did it quite successfully for a little while. He had about 30 men with him in 1976. He had gone back to Germany in January, and then by Gaur Purnima they arrived in Mayapur with a couple of these big buses and about 30 men. And they spent the whole year just touring around doing these programs. So somebody else that was also carrying Gaur Nitai I mentioned was Satsvarup Maharaj. He had his college preaching program going around in America. Although Prabhupada told him, don't take the deities into the classrooms, otherwise people will think that we're fanatics. But he had Gaur Nitai with him, and on May the 23rd, 1976, Prabhupada was in Hawaii. He received an ecstatic monthly report from Satsvarup Maharaj. He wrote from Chicago, where the local devotees are selling 1,000 books a week in the airport. His library party has obtained a 28-foot mobile home, which they have converted into a travelling temple, and they're installing Gaur Nitai deities, and it just happened to be on that day that Prabhupada received a letter. Jai Sri Sri Gaur Nitai Michael Shasi. So then the following month, 3 weeks later, Prabhupada was in Detroit, and Satsvarup Maharaj was there with his travelling party. So after going for his morning walk, when Prabhupada arrived back at the temple on June 13th, he accepted Satsvarup Maharaj's invitation to visit his mobile temple. Satsvarup informed Prabhupada that they have another 5 vans, 3 of which the library party are using for their college and university preaching, and 2 others which are used for fundraising to support the library party devotees. Altogether, he has about 20 men on this program, including the newly joined Eugene, who is an ex-priest from Los Angeles. This man had been a Catholic priest for about 23 years or something, and then somehow or another he met the devotees and he realized this was actually what he was looking for. So, he was quite a learned person also, and he had some, PhD or something like that. So he met Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles. He had a darshan with him. And then Prabhupada advised him to join up with Satsvarup Maharaj. So he joined the library party, and he wanted to write a book, I think, contrasting the life of a Catholic monk and, transiting into the life of a brahmachari in ISKCON. So that was his program. So he did do that. He joined up, at least for some time, he joined up with that travelling party with Satsvarup. Although you know, he was already in his mid-50s at that time. So he was, you know, very old then compared to us. You know, everybody else was about 22 to 25 years old. So he moves from city to city, visiting temples and devotees in his GBC zone as he does his university programs. This is Sat's route. Prabhupada stepped inside the 28-foot-long caravan-style vehicle. He sat for a few minutes on a cushion on a raised portion just behind the driver's seat, as Satsvarup Maharaj informed him of the facilities. The van is complete with a shower, toilet and kitchen, and has racks for Prabhupada's books and tapes. Sri Sri Gaur Nitai were installed less than a month ago. The Pujari opened the curtains to reveal their lordships, and Srila Prabhupada immediately offered his full prostrated obeisances, much to everybody's surprise and pleasure. In 3 minutes, the visit was over, and accompanied by a lively kirtan party, Prabhupada entered the temple for the rest of the morning program. So there, let's see. Actually, then the following month, and I don't know whether I've got this down here, I think I forgot to put it in. But Prabhupada then also, in July, he arrived in New York on July the 9th, and then I think about the 14th or 15th, then Prabhupada went to Gitanagari. So that's about a 5-hour trip. In those days it wasn't called Gitanagari actually, it was just called the Pennsylvania Farm. And they were, you know, they had a big, huge herd of brown Swiss pedigree cows. And they were supplying hundreds of gallons of milk every week to the New York temple for their restaurant. So Prabhupada was interested to go down and see how they were doing down there. And the mode of transport offered was one of the Radha Damodar Greyhound buses. So of course Prabhupada, you know, regarded the Radha Damodar Travelling Sankirtan Party as being, you know, the most potent preaching force that we had at that time in ISKCON. 100 brahmacharis, 6 or 7 buses, and you know, about a dozen vans, maxi vans, travelling all over the country, distributing, you know, 10 or 20,000 books, big books a month, plus, you know, 20,000 back to Godheads, and putting in $50,000 a month to the BBT. So somehow or another, Prabhupada had never been on one of those buses. He kind of looked on them, but he'd never travelled on one. So they invited Prabhupada to travel down to Gitanagari on the bus. So all the buses, because the main bus had Radha Damodar installed on it. But all the other buses, they had Gaur Nitai deities. So when Prabhupada got on the bus again, the same thing. There was a nice altar, and they opened the curtains. Prabhupada offered his dandavats to Gaur Nitai. And then as we zoomed down the highway at about 70 miles an hour, then Prabhupada had the regular morning program. We had a Guru Puja, Prabhupada gave class, he sang some bhajans, we had breakfast like that, so it was very nice. Prabhupada said that it was a dream come true, you know, to travel on the Radha Damodar bus. So anyway, let's see, what else have we got here? So February the 5th, 1976, Prabhupada had arrived in Mayapur, and he had already discussed with Bhavananda, Jayapataka and Sudama Maharaj at that time about this plan to have this sailing ship, the Nitai Padakamala, going up and down, you know, the Ganges and visiting all the villages there at the side of the river. So they had plans to install these Gaur Nitai deities. So on February the 5th, 1976, after Guru Puja, Prabhupada presided over a combined deity installation and a sannyas initiation ceremony. The head pujari, Jananivas, assisted by newly arrived GBC Jagadish Das, performed the Abhishek of Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. The beautiful 20-inch high neem wood deities were installed as the proprietors of the ocean-going boat, the Nitai Padakamala. Sudama Maharaj plans to sail up and down the Ganges with their lordships and other Mayapur devotees, preaching from village to village. After the deities were installed, Harikesh and Viraha were awarded sannyas. And there was one other devotee there, Mahavir, that had come to take sannyas, but then he decided to wait till the Gaur Purnima. So that was on the 5th. Then on the 7th of February, today is Advaitacharya's appearance day, half-day fast, and the day chosen for the launch of the boat. In the early morning, Prabhupada was driven in a jeep to Hulagat on the Jalangi River, where he inspected the Nitai Padakamala. Its renovations are complete, and the deities have been installed below the deck. The small wooden forms of Sri Sri Gaur Nitai will be taken on procession throughout the villages wherever the boat lands. So then they set sail. They had a nice big sail with Hari Krishna and ISKCON written on it. And off they went with about 15 Gurukul boys, little Bengali boys, and a couple of sannyasis. So on February the 15th, this is a week later, Siddhama Maharaj came back from his travels on the Nitai Padakamala. Guru Kripa Swami, who had arrived early in the morning, went immediately out to join it for a few days after hearing how successfully they had been faring. The devotees on the boat program have been received enthusiastically wherever they go. After docking at a village, they take Sri Sri Gaur Nitai ashore and go on procession through the village, door to door. All the villagers give a rupee and some foodstuffs, and in return they receive a Gita Gan. And Gita Gan was a rendition of the Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada had written in Bengali rhyme. So all the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, he had rewritten them in Bengali, but rhyming Bengali. And he had written it in such a way that it wasn't possible to misinterpret the verses and, come to this impersonal conclusion. So that book was published in 75 or 76, and the devotees started selling it. They were selling thousands of copies of it. Prabhupada was very happy with that. So on the program then, that's what they were doing. They would receive some money, give everybody a book, and in this way hundreds of books and large amounts of prasadam are being distributed. Everyone travelling on the boat is very enlivened, especially the Gurukul boys. So then 2 weeks later, on March the 5th, Bhavananda Maharaj, he got a bit fed up with doing management, so he had also decided to go out on the boat. So today he returned from the boat program, enthusiastic and full of wonderful stories about the responses that they've been receiving. Prabhupada relished hearing about the daily programs in the villages and the big receptions that they got wherever they went. Bhavananda described how they simply dock the boat, perform kirtan, and then walk in procession with Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. The villagers become very eager to have the party visit their homes. The devotees make it a point to sell everybody a Gita Gan, which they daily distribute by the hundreds. Prabhupada was excited at the news of the book sales. He made it clear that this was the success of the party. He praised Bhavananda that he had begun book distribution in India. Now he wants 100,000 Gita Gans printed immediately. Prabhupada was not small time. Everything on a big scale. He was always thinking about preaching to presidents and the Queen or this or that. So that program then continued on, and later on June the 7th, when Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, he received a report from Mayapur. So this was from Gagamuni Swami. So Gagamuni Maharaj had just been made the GBC, new GBC for Mayapur. So the day he arrived in Mayapur, he said, was the same day that Bhavananda had returned from his boat trip to the Sundarban on the Nitai Padakamala. Because the Sundarban is the area, it's the delta of the Ganges where she hits the Bay of Bengal. And there's thousands of islands all over the Sundarban there, and many of them are occupied, many of them are not. So the boat party had sold nearly 3,000 Gita Gans. And then when they went into Calcutta harbour, they were met by the Home Minister, Sri Tarankanti Ghosh, and 2 police launches. So Tarankanti Ghosh, he was from a Vaishnava family, Bengali family. He was the Home Minister. That means he was in charge of all the police in Bengal. And he came out to meet them on 2 police launches. So Mr. Ghosh climbed aboard the boat, offered his respects to Gaur Nitai, embraced Bhavananda with tears rolling down his eyes, and thanked Bhavananda for starting such a program in West Bengal. Mr. Ghosh met the boat without any prior message being given to him, and in other words, he has some genuine regard for your divine grace. Gagamuni Maharaj wanted to know if they should use motor launches, since this would make it easier to travel upstream rather than having to rely on the wind. So going downstream was no problem, but getting back up again to Mayapur, if there was no wind, then they were stuck. Yeah. Anyway, so again, Prabhupada was very happy with that. And Tarankanti Ghosh, Gaur Nitai, was their traditional family deity. And many families in Bengal, they all worship Gaur Nitai. So, let's see, now what else have we got here? So then another attempt at travelling and preaching with buses in India was in Bombay, when Prabhupada was there in mid-April. And after going for his morning walk, he came back, he went around the temple grounds, and he noticed a new minibus. So this is for Achyutananda Swami to tour South India in. When he heard that they are planning to have Radha and Krishna installed on the bus, Prabhupada suggested that Nitai Gaur would be better. But then when he was informed that people in the south of India like Radha Krishna and are not so familiar with Gaur Nitai, then Prabhupada conceded. So that was just, nowadays you'll see many of our temples in India, they have these minibuses, and in the back they have, Gaur Nitai, or they have Jagannath. That's more popular. And they just tour around, they open up, park in the middle of Calcutta somewhere, or Bombay, or they go down to the villages, and they immediately, show the deities, and people come, offer their respects, and then they sell them books. So it's a nice program. So that was just beginning at that time. And Achyutananda Swami and Yasodanandana Swami, they were the pioneers in going and travelling around South India. In those days we didn't have much in South India, mainly, it was Bombay, Mayapur and Vrindavan. And Govinda Maharaj had gone over to Orissa. Of course there was one temple, Hyderabad, that was being constructed. And there were a couple of devotees in Madras. But apart from that, the rest of South India was untouched. So these sannyasis, they were travelling around in these buses and holding programs in all the different main centres and showing the deities. Prabhupada was very happy with that. So let's see, Vrindavan deities and management adjustments. So that's a little bit about Gaur Nitai. Yeah, some bits of information here and there. Now we'll look at Vrindavan deities and managerial adjustments. Yeah, so this was on September the 5th, 1976. Of course, Vrindavan was always a problem to manage for some reason or another. Prabhupada would, he opened it on Ram Navami in 1975. And then every time he came back, he would see so many problems, so many things not being done right. I remember when his first visit back to Vrindavan in 1975 was at Janmashtami time. So Dhananjay was the temple president, Gopal Krishna was the GBC, Akshayananda I think was the co-president. And Prabhupada, when he came in, immediately, of course, he wanted to look and see how they were managing everything. It was the first, big custom-built temple in ISKCON, and in the most important place, in Vrindavan. So he was very concerned about every detail of what they were doing. So when he looked around, I remember there was a really funny incident. When you go through the front doors of the temple, there's a couple of rooms to either side. So they took Prabhupada into one of the rooms on the right-hand side and offered him a chair to sit down. So Gopal Krishna, he was always kind of, full of enthusiasm. So he was telling Srila Prabhupada, he said, "Oh, Prabhupada," he said, "this is such a wonderful temple. Everything is so first class." And then Prabhupada, he was sitting there and he was looking up, and there was this chandelier hanging from the ceiling, and it had this huge bird's nest built into the chandelier. It was just above Gopal's head. So he was saying, you know, Prabhupada, everything is so first class. Prabhupada was sitting there very dour, and he looked up and he said, you say it is first class, I say it is fifth class. Like this. And he chastised him like anything because the place wasn't clean properly. Anyway, that became, you know, like the modus operandi whenever Prabhupada came to Vrindavan, even in 76, you know, he'd spend the first 2 weeks or so complaining about this and that and calling in the managers and telling them, do this, do that. Like Shayananda was another case also. He was a sincere man, but he was a terrible manager. And Prabhupada would call him in, and every time Prabhupada would chastise, sometimes Prabhupada would really get on his case. He'd really chastise him about, you know, the cleanliness or the deity worship or the over-expenditure or, you know. And, he, you know, like Shayananda would sit down and he would say, yes, Prabhupada, you're right, Prabhupada. Yeah, because we're all fools, Prabhupada. You know, Prabhupada would say, why is this like this? And he would say, because we're all fools, Prabhupada, like this. But he would never do anything, you know. Prabhupada would get so frustrated. So I remember once going in and Prabhupada had just had a meeting with Gopal, Krsna and Akshayananda, and they'd gone out. Prabhupada was just sitting there. It's like, he knew whatever he said, it was, you know, it was hopeless. And he was just shaking his head. And he said, and he will say, because we're all fools, Prabhupada. And he will say, oh, everything is first class. Prabhupada was mimicking the two of them, you know, the responses. He said, what can be done? He'd just get to a point of frustration and then he would just kind of give up, you know, until the next visit. Anyway, so on September the 5th, again, Prabhupada had just arrived, so he was getting right into the management again. This was 76. So the discussion moved onto how to arrange the kitchens. Akshayananda had asked for confirmation that the three that they have now, one for the deities, one for the devotees, and one for the guest house, should be consolidated into one kitchen. And Prabhupada confirmed that was his desire. Why have three? So Akshayananda told him, yes, so I'll give you a list of the preparations that we'll offer for your approval. So Prabhupada said that it will mean offering less to the deities. Akshayananda said that it would mean offering less to the deities, but Prabhupada didn't see that as a problem. He counted the number of deities, and after some discussion, he decided that the 10 plates that they were offering now should be cut back to 6. So, you know, Prabhupada was very practical. They were spending far too much money every month. They were spending more money than they had income. So Prabhupada got into every detail, including how many plates of prasadam were being offered to the deities. Because we had Gauratai, Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta, then Krishna and Balaram, so that's 6. And then Radhashama Sundar, Vishaka and Lalita. So that was 10 deities. So each deity used to get their own plate. So then Prabhupada said, all right, now it's not necessary. 2 plates for each altar. That means 6 plates total. Prabhupada even sat with Bagaji, I remember, and they calculated how much it costs to make a single puri. Yeah? How much flour and, you know, ghee, and then they calculated, and then every plate they worked out, you know, 2 puris, 1 sabji, 1 this, 1 that, and the cost should not be more than, you know, a certain amount of rupees for each plate. So that was the kind of management that Prabhupada, you know, wanted, down to the very last paisa. So another item discussed was the flowers for the deity garlands. Prabhupada told them that they need not offer roses if they are too expensive. So then, later in the discussion, Akshayananda brought it back to the budget. So he said, so 5,000 rupees you have estimated for the deities for 1 month? Prabhupada shook his head. 500. Akshayananda and Gopal Krishna were a little stunned. 500? So right now they are spending up to 9,000 rupees in a month. So Prabhupada was going to cut them back to 500 rupees. Prabhupada explained how he had arrived at that figure. Although there are 10 main deities on the altar, Gauratai, Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta, Krishna and Balaram, and Radhashama, Sundar, Lalita and Vishaka, he's cutting the number of plates that are being offered to the deities from 10 to 6. On each plate, 8 puris are offered. Bhagavatam calculated the cost of the flour and the ghee used to make 48 puris to be 2 rupees. So in this way, they calculated the total cost of the entire offerings to be about 500 rupees. Prabhupada said that that was a rough calculation, and just in case they had missed something, he agreed to allow the total expenditure to go up to 1,000 rupees, but not more than that. Dutiful as ever, Achayananda Maharaj assured Prabhupada that he would go over every item with Bhagavatam. You don't believe me? Prabhupada said. Prabhupada had just explained everything to him. He said, yes, Prabhupada, I'll go over everything with Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada said, you don't believe me? Akshayananda knitted his brow. I can't understand. My intelligence is not great enough to understand it. I believe you, but I have to do it. That's all. It cannot go more than 1,000 rupees, Prabhupada emphasized. Akshayananda nodded. I can't quite grasp it, Prabhupada, but you say that it can't go above 500, so that will be it. I'm speaking of the deity, not for all, Prabhupada told him. For the others, 100 rupees per head, 5,000 rupees. So he calculated how much devotee maintenance for every member of the temple. Here, puri, kachuris and other things, all the best things. But general prasadam is not for puri and kachuri. They are the general food, so we're not going to supply puri, kachuri and halava to everyone, only for the deities. So everything must be calculated. So it was always fun and games whenever we went to bring down. Well, that's your microphone hit the deck there. It's not a good place to put that on. Anxiety. So I won't give the class here, but it was Prabhupada was always an anxiety about Vrindavan, how that temple would go on. So September the 24th, now this is 3 weeks later, it's still going on. And several times over the last few weeks, Prabhupada has been disturbed by the poor quality of the flowers on the deity garlands. Sometimes also the deities don't have any garlands on them when the curtains are opened for their morning darshan. When Prabhupada greeted the deities this morning, he saw that Krishna and Balaram yet again have no garlands. Openly aggravated, he half turned to Akshayananda and he told him sternly, this is another farce. He was so troubled by the poor standard of worship that he dedicated most of his class